Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the show on this Saturday, the 26th of February, 2022. Thank you for tuning in. Glad to have you guys here. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be talking about Russia. I'm going to be talking about Ukraine. I'm also going to be talking about the financial markets a little bit. So we got a wide range of topics today. Let's get started. Let's open up the charts right here and take a look at what's going on. The Fed officials are determined that they're going to make a March rate hike despite what's happening in Ukraine right now. And you know, this hardline stance that the Fed's been taking over the past number of months, first starting with their tightening process where they're winding down their asset purchases of U.S. Treasuries and mortgage-backed securities. They're getting that wound down to zero now, and now they're talking about hiking rates. So they're going to do the first rate hike, and they're saying it's on track. Well, you know, the Fed is not going to stop until they're forced to stop. And the markets have held up, and I think part of that, I'm just going to guess, the plunge protection team possibly, the exchange stabilization fund. We don't see they don't announce what they're doing anymore to us. They don't tell us what they're doing with that, and they could be. We've seen plunges in the market, and they have something called the plunge protection team. They can buy the market. They can do anything now. They can control things to a certain degree, but the bond market's too big. They do have ways they can control the bond market too. It's called yield curve control, but they daresn't use it. It'll bring on almost instantaneous hyperinflation if they do. Regardless, they're going to keep pushing because they feel the need now to slow down the rate of inflation. But it's a little bit too late. The old saying, a dollar sorry guys, a day late and a dollar short. That's the old saying. A day late, they're a day late and a dollar short. Inflation's already out of the bag, and what it would take to actually slow this inflation down now, it would take a rate of return on your investment in treasuries. It would take a yield. So if we're talking about a 15% inflation, you'd have to have at least 16.5 or 17% on the 10-year U.S. note. So you get a rate of return over and above inflation. Ain't going to happen. Ain't even close to going to happen. So, you know, the bond market is the market to watch. Eventually what's going to happen is now that they're not purchasing these treasuries anymore, and they were the biggest purchaser, and now they're going to start hiking rates on the lower end of the yield curve. They're heading toward a desperate situation. It says they're stuck to their resolve. It says they are going to do this despite uncertainties posed by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Okay, so let's take a look here. The United States is going to impose sanctions on Russia. We already know about that. But it's going to be a targeted removal from SWIFT. This is what they're talking about now. Removing Russia from the SWIFT system. But what I get here is this word targeted removal of Russia from SWIFT. Does that mean that some of Russian transactions are still going to be able to flow through the SWIFT system? They're only going to target certain transactions? I just don't know just yet. We're going to have to wait and see on that one. Take a look. Now, I'm going to tell you what's going on. Ukraine's not small. It's roughly the size of Texas. That's big. You know, you can get in a car and drive across Texas. It takes you all day long to drive. Just driving it at 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour, which is roughly the same thing. You can drive all day long and not drive across Texas. And that's the same way with Russia right now. In Ukraine, it's big, and there's like 50 million people there. It's a lot of people. You get 200,000 soldiers, roughly, Russian soldiers. What they've had to do now is they've dispersed themselves. That 200,000 people, which is soldiers, have dispersed themselves amongst 50 million people. Well, that would mean they'd be outnumbered, what, 100 to 1 or something? And that means they're not all clustered in one area either. What they've tried to do is they've tried to do a blitzkrieg. They've come into the country and they've rode down the highways. They've used the main highways. They're using the Ukrainian highways. They're riding their tanks and APVs and down the highways and trying to head toward Kiev. They're trying to converge on Kiev. Kiev, the main city there, the big city. Got over 2 million people in it. Trying to take down the Ukrainian government. But what I heard today is they are starting to mount resistance against them. Ukrainians, and they're just basically enlisting anybody who wants to fight. And then the men over 60 are allowed to leave the country. They're imploring the men, not women and children. Women and children are leaving like droves from the countries. They're leaving their husbands behind, everything else. And they're recruiting them almost instantaneously as a civilian fighting force against the Russians. Commanders of the Ukrainian armed forces and Western analysts recognize that given the major disparities in capabilities of operations by the upwards of 190,000 Russian military now deployed in parts of Ukraine will likely overwhelm the country's conventional defenses. Conventional defenses, you see? There's a key word. But now, the Ukrainians are starting to arm civilians, and there's a tremendously large civilian population. Basically anybody who can hold a weapon. Now, the thing is will this turn the tide on the Russians? Well, I'm going to tell you what. It doesn't necessarily have to actually turn the tide on the Russians. You see, there's a tremendous danger out there right now for World War III. If Russia goes in there and pushes Ukraine over, topples them too quick and easy, well, the NATO countries that surround Ukraine on all of its western flanks are member states of NATO. And NATO has got a policy where it's one for all kind of policy and all for one. And the thing about this is they have a commitment. I think it's called Article 5. I'm not exactly sure, but what it actually means is basically is if you attack a NATO country, you're attacking all of NATO, and you're attacking America too. You're attacking Germany. You're attacking the whole Western world, and the whole Western world is willing to fight back, and they have a commitment to fight back. Basically what this means is be entering into something where we don't want to go there. Don't want to go there. So the longer Russia gets bogged down here, and I mean, we can only hope for defeated there. That's what we can hope for. But the longer they get bogged down there, the less likelihood of them trying to attack other NATO member countries and start World War III. And so, yeah, I mean, a country can fight back with asymmetrical warfare. And it doesn't mean it has to be something that is logistically set up for warfare either. It means that they can mobilize just ordinary civilians even. Look at what happened in Vietnam. I mean, they were digging tunnels underneath the ground and hiding, and then springing out on the and they inflicted such casualties uh, on the United States' forces using asymmetrical type warfare. And so it's not. This isn't over in Ukraine just because there's a huge force of Russians and just because they're outnumbered. Uh, this is a war is never over until it's over. And you does. I'm just saying, don't count Ukraine out. Not just yet. They are. It's called irregular warfare here in Ukraine. They're doing everything they can, as they're saying to them, as a battle rages around Kiev and other Ukraine cities. You know, and it's because of the horror of war. And I mean, when a person gets to a situation where they have to try to save their lives, they have to fight back. And this is the thing, you know, and they just get so that they're not going to take the sorrow anymore. They're not going to let people and do what they want. I mean, I could just imagine, you know. Can you imagine a mother trying to explain? Say a mother had a 10-year, oh no, let's not say 10 years old. Let's say 6 years old. Say a mother had a 6-year-old son. She's trying to explain war to him. And she said, son, you know when you go to the 4th of July every year and they light off all the firecrackers and fireworks? He says, yeah. And she said, remember the sparklers I got you last year? And you read on the side of the package all of the dangers. It said, danger, do not hold in your hand and burn this in your hand. Do not look at it with your eyes. Do not do this. They said this is because they're taking care for your well-being, that sparklers and fireworks can be dangerous. And so the companies that make them are trying to be very careful to make sure that they don't hurt anybody. And this is why they put the warnings on the package, and they try to make them so that they don't hurt anybody, the fireworks. But they're pretty and everybody likes them, she says. He says, yeah, I understand that. She says, well, what war is there's these other companies out there, not the fireworks companies, but these other companies called munitions companies that make something called munitions, but it's like big fireworks that they make. Great big fireworks, she said. And the little boy looks and says, yeah, well, why do they make them? They make them because they're pretty and everybody wants to see. No, she says, they design them different. Instead of designing them not to hurt anybody and putting warnings on the packages, they try to make them as lethal and as deadly as possible. And this is why they put metal casings around them. Little boy goes, why would they do that? That's crazy, Mama. They're crazy. They're insane. She says, yes, son, war is a form of insanity. They are crazy. She says there's crazy people in the world and crazy companies that actually make money off of trying to make something, a product, that's going to kill as many people as possible. He says, why? Why do we allow these companies to even exist? She says they call it national defense. And it's a lunacy, that it's a crazy thing that's come from the past, when people used to live in tribes. And she said they first developed ways to fight against one another. They come up with bows and arrows and sticks and stones and everything else, and then they invented gunpowder, she said. And then what they did was they started working on trying to use gunpowder, and first she said they used things like cannons and muskets, and she was trying to explain it to him, the progression of how we got here to this lunacy that we have today in the world. We actually have a factory that's creating a product, and they're trying to make the product as deadly as possible. And then there's a lot of money. Call these defense contractors. I mean, and nationalism. You know, it's all come from our ancient prehistoric societies that we built for ourselves and built up to what and slowly progressed to what we have today. It's time for something new. Something better than all of this. And if we don't get over this hurdle and get to the something new, something better, and we stick with the way we're doing things, we're going to extinct ourselves. Because now we've developed these big sparklers or big fireworks that can bring on something called a nuclear winter and mutual assured destruction and bring on so much loss of life and casualties that the world just can't survive it. But it's madness. It's all total madness, and I mean, we have to at least quit looking at our TikTok on our cell phone and start to focus on, hey, you know, what's going on? Let's wake up before humanity destroys itself. With these brokers out there who make their tremendous amounts of money on selling munitions to all of us idiots that are going to use it. And on the other side of that coin, you got laboratories out there who are using something called gain of function now because they have the technology, which is just as bad as the thermonuclear devices being created in other places. What do we need all that crap for? Time for something new, time for something better. It's time for us to wake up in the world and start to realize that we're all trapped underneath this same biodome, which is called planet Earth, and we're all breathing the same air. Do we want to breathe nice, fresh, clean air? Do we want to have a nice, clean environment? Or do we want to breathe air that's full of radioactive waste or radioactive air and have our hair fall out and our teeth fall out and our gums bleed until we slowly die of some sort of leukemia or cancer, a slow, painful death? Is that what we want for us and our children? Or do we want something better? Thank you guys for listening. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next show. Bye-bye.